Most fathers pass down family heirlooms. James Carter passed down a promise. But when that promise cost him his business, his home, and the respect of his entire town, people asked, why sacrifice everything for daughters who will grow up, marry, and leave you behind? What they didn't know, those daughters weren't planning to leave. They were planning to repay. Stay with us as we uncover a story not just about survival, but about how quiet love can defy gravity. The air inside Willow Creek General Hospital was thick with anticipation. James Carter paced the hallway, imagining toy planes for the son he and Emily had dreamed of. Behind the closed door, monitors beeped steadily. Then, the beeping slowed. A final cry faded. Silence swallowed the room. Moments later, a doctor approached, eyes downcast, hat in hand. "Mr. Carter, your wife didn't make it, but your daughters are alive." Two nurses gently placed tiny, swaddled babies into James's trembling arms, identical twin girls. His breath caught. "Emily, we were going to name him Daniel if it was a boy," he whispered through tears. He kissed each tiny forehead. "Sophie, Grace, I will take care of you. I swear it." Grief and wonder wrestled in his heart, but the vow was sealed. There was no family to help. Emily's parents had passed, and James's own mother had been laid to rest only 3 months earlier. Alone, James carried his newborn daughters into a night that felt endless. At home, unpaid bills and Emily's funeral expenses lay scattered across the kitchen table like broken promises. The crib stood empty. Dawn came before sleep did. The twins cried out, hungry, but the formula tins were empty. James panicked. He wrapped the girls in his coat and hurried through the quiet streets. By chance, he found Mrs. Peterson, the town midwife, known for gathering donor milk from nursing mothers. She pressed 2 warm bottles into his hands. "They're not just your daughters now," she said softly. "They belong to all of us." Her kindness stunned him. Humanity, it seemed, still had a heartbeat. That fragile dawn gave James just enough hope to keep moving. He rocked the babies gently, humming the lullabies Emily had loved. The house felt colder now, but his daughter's small breaths warmed his chest. In the following weeks, James stitched diapers from old bedsheets and boiled water in rusty pots. He learned to swaddle by trial and error. Neighbors peeked over fences, whispering, "A carpenter can't raise infants alone." James ignored them. He built a mobile above the crib using scraps of wood and string. When exhaustion threatened to break him, the vow echoed in his mind, "I will take care of you." At the first monthly checkup, the twins were gaining weight. The nurses were surprised. The townspeople stopped predicting disaster. But loneliness crept in each night. James stood by the crib, telling his daughters stories about their mother, the woman who loved peach pie and laughed louder than the church bells. He prayed they would one day understand the depth of their mother's sacrifice. For now, all he could offer was steady hands and a father's stubborn heart. Before Sophie and Grace even learned to smile, the quiet legend of a carpenter who refused to fail his daughters began to take root. One sleepless night at a time. By the 3rd month, Sophie discovered her thumb. Grace learned to shriek whenever her sister received attention. James juggled feedings with furniture orders, carving headboards while rocking the cradle with his foot. One sweltering afternoon, covered in timber dust, he fainted from sheer fatigue. He awoke to find Mrs. Peterson and 3 village women standing over him. "Pride will bury you faster than grief," Mrs. Peterson scolded gently. They arranged a schedule. 4 women would rotate visiting, washing clothes, bringing soup, and teaching James the secrets of colic cries and diaper rashes. At first, he protested, but practical love wore down his stubbornness. Every evening, Mrs. Peterson arrived with fresh bottles of donor milk. "Emily helped many mothers learn to read," she reminded him. "Now they repay her." Accepting help had once felt like defeat. Now it felt like a promise honored. James kept meticulous notes on feeding times and bottle volumes. He was determined to raise healthy, strong girls. The twins grew into chubby toddlers, turning his carpentry shed into a playground. Wooden shavings became confetti in their hair. Sophie's first word was plain. Grace's was Papa. Each milestone steeled James's resolve to give them opportunities he never had, especially education. But the whispers continued. A man can't raise children without a wife. Children need a mother's hand. Suitors began approaching him at market stalls, praising his woodworking skills and hinting at his loneliness. James smiled politely but kept his heart closed. Each night he sat by Emily's portrait, confessing his fears. Am I enough for them? They deserve more than carved toys. Her painted eyes never answered, but the candlelight seemed to reflect silent approval. And so, despite the rumors and the weight of doubt, James Carter and his daughters built a fortress of 3. Quietly, steadfastly, and with a love that no gossip could shake. When Sophie and Grace turned 5, James Carter faced a new storm: school fees. His carpentry business provided just enough for food and rent. Desks and cabinets paid the bills but left little for education. He spent nights calculating costs, tracing numbers with a pencil worn dull from worry. Friends and elders began offering advice. James, they said, find a wife. A woman can help with the girls. You cannot do this alone. James hesitated, not for love. Not even for companionship, but for partnership. The thought of someone sharing the burden was tempting. At church picnics, a woman named Linda began lingering near his table. She was soft-spoken, recently widowed, admired for her cooking. She praised his furniture and brought small treats for the twins. They are such good girls, she would say. If I were their mother, they'd never lack love. Her gentle smile chipped away at his doubts. After months of quiet courtship, James proposed. The wedding was simple, vows beneath a maple tree, with Sophie and Grace twirling in yellow dresses. For 6 sweet months, the house smelled of fresh bread again. Bedtime included stories in 2 voices. James dared to believe he had built them a second chance at family. But reality struck on a humid Thursday. James returned late from the workshop. He heard screaming before he opened the front door. Bursting inside, he found Linda towering over the twins, a wooden spoon raised high, welts already formed on Sophie's tiny arms. "Bastard children!" Linda spat. "You spilled palm oil on my new dress." Grace cowered behind her sister. Sophie tried to shield her. Something primal ignited in James. He stepped between them, voice shaking but controlled. "Touch them again, and you will answer to me and to God." Linda sneered. "No other woman will want a man cursed with motherless girls." She packed her belongings before dawn and slammed the gate behind her. Whispers followed quickly. James Carter's second marriage failed. Foolish man. What did he expect raising girls alone? That night, as the twins slept, James knelt by their beds. "Never again will I gamble with your safety," he vowed. "You are my everything." School resumed. Linda became a fading memory, like chalk washed away by rain. James learned to cook uneven pancakes. He braided hair with crooked parts. He forgot picture day forms, but the twins giggled through it all. They even invented a secret handshake. 3 claps and a nose tap, a symbol of their unbreakable unity. At night, when loneliness pricked him, James worked until dawn, sanding planks and fulfilling furniture orders. He financed spelling bee entry fees and class excursions. The town council shook their heads. Who sells his heart for daughters? Sons would carry his name. James answered with more shelves and more laughter echoing from the carpentry shed. In that quiet defiance, the twins learned their first lesson. Family is not who shares your blood. It's who chooses you, every single day. Primary school blurred into a rush of chalk dust and lunchbox swaps. Sophie adored science charts. Grace took apart broken radios and tried to make them sing again. By middle school, expenses grew. Uniforms, textbooks, lab fees. Timber prices rose and James's income plateaued. He skipped meals, accepted night commissions, built office desks under weak kerosene light. One rainy afternoon, a businessman admired a mahogany cradle James was restoring. "Your craftsmanship is wasted here," the man said. "Open a showroom in the city." James shook his head. His dreams wore school uniforms, not suits. Then, without warning, government inspectors arrived. New permits and safety upgrades were required. The costs exceeded a year's profit. James pleaded for time. They gave him a closure notice. That evening, he spread the notice on the dinner table. The twins, now 13, watched silently as he buried his face in calloused hands. "Papa," Grace whispered, "we will be okay." They scavenged discarded wood to build birdhouses. Sophie painted bright wings. Grace engineered swiveling bases. They sold them at Sunday markets. The earnings barely covered tuition. James made a painful decision. He would sell the carpentry shop itself. Selling a limb, he thought, but the future demands sacrifice. The town exploded in gossip. Foolish man. Girls will marry and leave. Sons would have stayed. The twins heard every sneer. They said nothing. They added extra colors to the birdhouses, turning pain into art. 3 months later, a buyer offered enough to cover high school fees and a modest living allowance. James signed the papers with trembling hands. On moving day, the twins pressed their palms against the dusty shop walls. "Thank you," they whispered, "for feeding us all these years." James locked the door one final time. Tears fell onto the iron padlock. He carried only his toolbox and walked away. The wooden sign above the shop creaked in the wind, whispering a farewell no one else could hear. They relocated to a rented apartment near the city's central library, close to the twins' new secondary school. James searched for work. Carpentry jobs were scarce. One day, a notice caught his eye. Library cleaner needed. Modest pay, dawn to noon. At the interview, Mrs. Whitmore, the head librarian, examined his scarred hands. "Anyone who respects wood will respect books," she said. "The job is yours." James swept marble corridors and polished reading tables. He oiled creaky hinges and patched torn pages, muttering, "No story deserves the dustbin." The twins often joined him after class, doing homework between the shelves. Librarians slipped extra textbooks into their backpacks. At night, they shared a single light bulb, told riddles, and studied. Grace tinkered with broken alarm clocks. Sophie traced airplane flight paths on old maps salvaged from the library archives. James marveled at how their hunger for knowledge outshone their hunger for food. But the community's sharp tongues followed them into the city. Market women scoffed at James's bargaining over bruised tomatoes. "Where's your wife?" they asked. Taxi drivers joked, "Rent the girls out for bride price advances." Each insult chipped away at James. He stored those broken pieces, intending to build something stronger later. Opportunity came wrapped in disappointment. The twins' school announced a field trip to the regional airport, a dream chance for both girls, but the fee was beyond reach. James Carter considered pawn shops. Hearing his sigh, Sophie gently stopped him. "Papa, don't. We'll write essays instead." But Mrs. Whitmore, the librarian, intervened quietly, sponsoring them. On the tarmac, Sophie's pulse seemed to sync with jet engines. Grace studied the wing flaps, eyes gleaming with unspoken equations. That day, both girls declared their dreams out loud for the first time. "I want to fly. I want to build what flies." James nodded, his pride swelling and his fear growing. "Then we'll aim for the sky." But aiming was easy, reaching was not. By high school, tuition became a monthly avalanche. James patched school shoes with leftover leather, repaired uniforms until seams groaned, and accepted extra cleaning shifts, scrubbing graffiti from stairwells at midnight. The girls tried to help. They volunteered at church bake sales, saving coins in a biscuit tin labeled Sky Fund. Despite every sacrifice, the gap between expenses and income widened. One rainy night, James sat by his toolbox, the last relic of his carpentry trade. "Maybe it's time to sell this too," he thought. But selling the tools felt like surrendering the part of him that had first built hope. Then came a new blow. The landlord raised the rent beyond what his cleaner salary could cover. James stored their belongings in a borrowed church space. He slept on a storeroom mat behind the library. When the twins visited on weekends, he lied. "We're upgrading the apartment." They sensed the truth, but respected his pride. Then the unthinkable happened. Exhausted, James nodded off while using a floor buffer. The machine slammed into a bookshelf. Rare volumes toppled into a puddle. Mrs. Whitmore gasped, "James, your health is failing." James expected to be fired. Instead, she called a staff meeting. Librarians organized a fundraiser, citing his years of service. Professors donated. Former library patrons mailed checks. Within weeks, funds covered his medical bills and secured a small bedsitter near the campus. Mrs. Whitmore refused his protests. "You've mended our books for years. Let us mend your life." During recovery, James audited free evening classes in computer-aided drafting. "Old dogs can learn new tricks," he told the twins with a smile. They cheered him on, Grace supervising his physical therapy via video, Sophie reminding him to take his medications. By senior year, the girls' tuition nearly broke them. James mended more uniforms, cooked cheaper meals, and took weekend cleaning jobs at office buildings. Some strangers mistook the twins for his employees. "These are my daughters," James would correct proudly, "future pilot and engineer." Mockery faded. Some strangers even offered bus fare. When university admission letters arrived, the family gathered breathlessly. Sophie, Bachelor of Science in Aviation, Emerald Air Academy. Grace, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, Aerotech Dynamics University. The joy was electric, until they saw the tuition figures. Scholarships were available but highly competitive. One required an essay titled "Why My Background Fuels My Dreams." Sophie wrote about losing a mother she never met, finding father figures among library shelves, and dreaming in the language of engine thrust. Grace described turning birdhouses and broken radios into lessons on lift and torque. Their raw honesty won partial grants, but still not enough. James returned to his toolbox. This time he didn't hesitate, he carried it to a pawn shop. The clerk examined the chisels and mallets. "This is old," he said, offering a price that felt like an insult. James accepted. He returned home with cash in hand. "University will happen," he declared. The twins wept, not from joy, but from the weight of his sacrifice. Whispers in Willow Creek intensified. "A man without assets is no man. Those girls will leave you behind." James burned the letters containing such words. By September, they scraped together the first semester's fees. On move-in day, James borrowed a wheelbarrow to carry 2 suitcases and a stack of second-hand textbooks across campus lawns. Students in sleek cars stared, the twins smiled and waved. Before leaving, James knelt in public, pride forgotten, and prayed over his daughters. "God, trade my strength for their success." The dormitory elevator doors closed, taking his daughters upward while he remained on the ground floor. "This is where I belong," he thought, "rooted so they can rise." University life was both dazzling and brutal. Sophie battled advanced physics and simulator drills. Grace fought through calculus and machine design. They rode packed buses at dawn. At night, they cleaned part-time at the campus cafeteria, pouring leftover soup into thermos flasks for their father. James, now 48, felt his muscles protest with every mop stroke. He refused to rest. When anxiety overwhelmed the girls, they called him. He recited motivational quotes scribbled on napkins. Pressure turns rough stones into smooth ones. During a campus symposium, Sophie impressed a visiting pilot with her sharp questions. He offered mentorship and access to flight simulators. Grace entered a design contest and proposed adjustable winglets for small aircraft. She won. The prize money paid the next month's rent. They called James, voices trembling with relief. That night, James danced alone in a library corridor, broom in hand. "God hears persistent knocks," he whispered. But the weight of sacrifice never lightened. James slipped on wet marble and sprained his back. Sick leave meant lost wages. The twins offered solutions. Sophie threatened to drop a class. Grace offered to sell her phone. James vetoed both. They compromised by sending him weekly meal prep containers to protect his health. By semester's end, both girls ranked in the top 5 of their cohorts. Their names appeared on the dean's list. Whispers shifted from disdain to admiration. They returned to their tiny apartment, high-fiving over bowls of instant noodles. Fireworks cracked outside for Founders' Day. Inside, 3 hearts celebrated a quieter triumph. Faith proving stronger than circumstance. By their 3rd year at university, cracks had begun to appear in even the most carefully laid plans. The twins were excelling academically, but finances remained a relentless shadow. James Carter's weekend cleaning shifts were barely enough to cover utilities. The girls stretched their cafeteria earnings and scholarships as far as they could, but tuition, materials, and living expenses outpaced them. Then an unexpected opportunity arrived. SkyWest Airlines announced a highly selective internship for aviation students. Only 2 placements existed. The competition was fierce. Most candidates had family ties to the industry or personal recommendations from pilots. Sophie applied anyway. Meanwhile, Aerotech Dynamics launched a design competition for engineering students. The challenge: develop a lightweight but sturdy avionics bracket that could withstand high G-forces while reducing fuel consumption. Grace submitted her prototype, drawing from years of building birdhouses and experimenting with salvaged metals. As the weeks crawled by, the family waited in silent hope. Then the breakthrough came. On the morning results were posted, Sophie stood before the SkyWest bulletin board. For a moment, the world blurred around her. Her name was ranked first. She gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "We did it," she whispered before collapsing into Grace's arms. "Papa's mop bought me wings." Back at Aerotech, Grace's design had not only won the competition, but also earned her a permanent research placement and a modest stipend. She wired half the first paycheck to her father without hesitation. When James received the funds, he didn't buy new clothes or better food. He purchased health insurance for the first time in nearly 20 years. That evening, he sat alone in the small bedsitter apartment, his journal open. Spilled milk led to donor mothers. Broken cradles led to birdhouses. Sleeping on storeroom floors led to strangers' generosity. All pain had purpose. But the victories came with new pressures. As the twins prepared for their final semester, James began working overtime again, determined to help them graduate debt-free. One rainy evening, while polishing the oak banisters at the library, James felt a familiar tightening in his chest. Doctors confirmed mild hypertension. When he told the twins, panic gripped their hearts. Sophie offered to drop a class and take a second job. Grace threatened to sell her laptop. James refused both. "You will finish this. That's the deal we made." Instead, they compromised. Weekly meal deliveries, medication check-ins, and a promise from James to reduce his cleaning shifts. The twins kept moving forward. Sophie aced her instrument flight check ride, earning flawless scores in takeoff and landing procedures. Grace unveiled her capstone project, an AI-assisted diagnostics module for cockpit systems. Judges awarded her highest honors. The dean's list featured both their names. Whispers changed. The same neighbors and former classmates who once mocked the family now praised their perseverance. The janitor's daughters, the pilot, and the engineer. Media requests flooded in. The twins declined interviews, preferring to focus on final exams, but their story spread anyway. At the library, James's years of service were ending due to fiscal restructuring. A quiet retirement party was organized by Mrs. Whitmore and the staff. James accepted the news gently. Seasons change. What he didn't know was that Mrs. Whitmore had been working behind the scenes. She circulated his resume to furniture boutiques across the city. Within days, Artisan Gallery, a luxury design firm, offered him a consultant role. His task: design custom furniture for high-end hotels. The pay tripled his cleaner salary. When he told Sophie and Grace, they screamed with joy. Their laughter echoed so loudly in the dormitory that a fire alarm was triggered. 3 victories. 1 week. The days leading up to graduation were a blur of preparations. James tailored his old Sunday suit and bought a second-hand camera. He watched YouTube tutorials to learn basic photography. "I'll capture every moment myself," he told Mrs. Whitmore with a smile. In his journal, he wrote, "Emily, come see what your girls have become." Graduation day dawned bright and clear. The university stadium overflowed with proud families and curious spectators. James arrived early, securing a front-row seat. When Sophie's name was called, he couldn't hold back. "That's my pilot," he shouted. The audience burst into laughter and applause. Sophie accepted her diploma, beaming through tears. Then Grace crossed the stage, tassel swinging. She paused, located her father, and blew him a kiss. James tried to take pictures, but his tears blurred the viewfinder. Strangers nearby took photos for him. After the ceremony, the twins led him to the airport tarmac, where SkyWest Airlines had parked a training jet for demonstrations. Sophie, now an official first officer trainee, invited her father into the cockpit. James traced the switches, hands trembling. "I used to build toy planes from scrap wood." Sophie smiled. "Your hands built this future too." Grace joined them, holding a small, intricately carved gift, a miniature wooden plane. "It's made from the first mahogany you let me touch," she said softly, "for your new desk at Artisan Gallery." James cradled it as if it were alive. That evening, as they celebrated with fried chicken and mashed potatoes at a modest diner, a news crew finally cornered them. A reporter asked, "Mr. Platt, Carter, what kept you going?" James answered without hesitation, "A promise to their mother." The clip went viral overnight. Parents from across the nation shared the story. Donations poured into a scholarship fund the twins had quietly established for young women pursuing careers in STEM. They named it Emily's Promise. That night, back in their small apartment, Sophie looked at her father. "We're not finished, Papa." Grace nodded. "Now we build something that lasts." James chuckled. "Bigger than airplanes?" Sophie replied. "Bigger than us." 6 months after graduation, life at last shifted from survival to stability. James Carter thrived in his new consultant role at Artisan Gallery. His furniture designs graced luxury hotel suites and corporate lobbies across the city. He trained young apprentices, not only teaching woodworking, but also lessons about perseverance and quiet dignity. In the evenings, he attended business courses at the community college. "Education never ends," he told his apprentices, echoing advice he had once given Sophie and Grace. His daughters, now women, soared. Sophie advanced to co-pilot regional flights, collecting postcards from cities she once traced on old library maps. Each landing, she whispered, "Papa, we made it." Grace's diagnostics module won a National Engineering Award. She secured a leadership role at Aerotech Dynamics, spearheading research on sustainable aircraft technology. But their greatest project was yet to come. One spring morning, the twins arrived at James's apartment carrying an envelope. Inside was a real estate deed. "Papa," Sophie said, "we found a house." They drove him to a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood just outside the city. Before a cream-colored mansion, they stopped. A gold plaque beside the door read, "Carter House." James stepped back in disbelief. "I cannot accept this. It's too much." Grace held his hand firmly. "You once slept on a storeroom floor so we could have textbooks. Accept this roof because now, finally, we can." Inside, the living room displayed framed photographs, Emily's smiling face, the twins at every age, and even a copy of James's first carpentry license. Tears traced his cheeks. For the first time in decades, he didn't feel like a man who had lost everything. He felt like a man who had built everything that mattered. The housewarming party gathered an unlikely mix of people: librarians, donor mothers, former apprentices, and even some of the skeptics who had once mocked him. Many apologized. Some stayed silent, humbled by undeniable proof of a father's faith. James raised a glass of sparkling cider. "To Emily, and to every unseen hand that helped carry us here." But the family's ambitions stretched beyond comfort. The twins proposed building a combined primary school and health clinic in their childhood town of Willow Creek, where educational and medical resources were scarce. They funded it through their salaries, James's profits, and donations sparked by their viral graduation story. Construction began that autumn. James oversaw site carpentry himself, designing desks wide enough for left-handed students, an often overlooked detail. Sophie led weekend aviation science workshops, teaching children how to build paper planes and dream bigger than their circumstances. Grace installed solar panels and explained renewable energy in simple, child-friendly language. On opening day, crowds gathered. The building bore the name Emily Carter Memorial School and Health Center. A choir sang. SkyWest Airlines honored Sophie with a celebratory flyover. Children screamed in delight as the aircraft roared above. James gave a speech, voice steady. Once people said investing in daughters was a waste. Today those daughters invest in everyone. Applause thundered. Newspaper headlines celebrated the twins' achievement, but they redirected the spotlight to the community and to early supporters like Mrs. Peterson and Mrs. Whitmore, each given honorary plaques. Humility, they believed, was the foundation for lasting impact. In the months that followed, the clinic reported a sharp drop in preventable diseases. School enrollment doubled, especially among girls. One child announced, "I will become a pilot doctor," inspired by both sisters. The family's quiet vow had rippled into lives they would never fully know. But even in triumph, life circled back to old chapters. One afternoon, Linda, the estranged stepmother, arrived at Artisan Gallery, gaunt and weary. Her second husband had squandered her savings. She now sought employment. Staff bristled, but James offered her tea. "I was drowning in my own bitterness back then," Linda admitted. "I hurt the girls because I couldn't face my own failures." James felt anger stir but remembered sleepless nights spent carving forgiveness into wood. He offered her a small consulting contract, under the supervision of the HR department, not himself. That evening, he told the twins. Grace clenched her jaw. Sophie sighed and recited Psalm 23. They agreed. Mercy did not erase memory, but it freed the heart from old chains. Years flowed like a gentle river. Sophie achieved captain status, commanding international flights. Grace led a team that developed lightweight composite fuselages, reducing aircraft fuel consumption by 15%. Their joint foundation, Emily's Promise, sponsored dozens of girls nationwide. On the anniversary of Emily's passing, the family visited her grave. James placed cedar shavings shaped like wings on the headstone. The twins read letters to the mother they had never met, sharing stories of flights, inventions, and a mango garden at their new home. The breeze rustled the trees as if Emily herself applauded. At the 20th anniversary of the Emily Carter School and Clinic, dignitaries gathered for the unveiling of a new wing. James, now 70, walked slowly but proudly with a cane hand-carved by Grace. A choir of children sang a song titled A Father's Promise, with lyrics written by Sophie during a transatlantic layover. As the speeches ended, a young girl named Amina tugged James's sleeve. "Sir, I want to become an aerospace engineer. I want to help Captain Sophie someday." James knelt, despite the creaking of his knees. "Aim higher than the clouds, my child." A photographer captured the moment. The image later headlined international magazines with the caption, "Faith in Flight." That night, family and friends gathered at Carter House. Apprentices, pilots, engineers, donor mothers, even the once skeptical elders, mingled freely. James raised his glass one final time. "Love is the only investment that never depreciates. Thank you all for proving it." The twins unveiled a documentary about their journey, set to screen in schools worldwide. James watched the trailer, montages of sawdust, library halls, and runway lights. His eyes blurred. "If this story teaches anything," he told the room, "it's that every child is a runway. Clear the debris, and they will take flight." Later that night, alone on the balcony, James whispered toward the stars, "Emily, our girls fly higher than we ever dreamed." Above him, a distant jet glimmered. Maybe Sophie piloted it. Maybe not, but it didn't matter. The trail it left across the night sky was signature enough, proof that promises kept with love could defy gravity forever. In a world quick to dismiss quiet sacrifices, James Carter's story reminds us, true strength often speaks in whispers, not shouts. It is carved patiently, one choice at a time. Not for applause, not for reputation, but for the simple, stubborn belief that love, consistent and unconditional, can outlast hardship, prejudice, and even time itself. Families are not built by blood alone. They are built by those who stay when it's hardest. And the promises we make in love are the legacies that lift future generations into the sky. If you've ever been judged for sacrificing everything for your family, comment 1. If you believe quiet, steady love still wins in the end, comment 2. And if this story touched you, subscribe for more real stories that prove good people don't just survive, they rise.